Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Bill, so I'll let you start, Russ.
Russ Dean, Town Manager.
Chris Suter, Resident Chair.
Hi, Jerry Hamill, committee member.
Mark Furlong, committee member.
Julie Gilman, Select Board Rep.
And Jeannie Wright, Vice Chair.
All right, next, I think it's meeting minutes.
Which I don't think anybody has, do they?
They were sent out, there were
Yeah.
two
Were they
sets.
distributed?
Yeah, there were
Okay.
two sets.
Then we're ready to go. Sounds good.
Make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second that. Well, did you want to talk?
Discussion, yeah.
Yeah, first,
Let's do, just make sure you include the dates in the motions.
Yeah.
The minutes of, approve the minutes of XYZ date.
all right, we'll start with January.
Yeah, so January 15th, we go on that one first? Yeah, I've got questions on that, basically.
Okay. What are your questions?
I got questions. Okay, the first thing I have a question on is on the, we were all here, you weren't on there, I went on. Mark and I are not on as far as the members present.
Oh.
So that's one thing.
Okay.
Some of the wording on this here was really confusing. I actually gave it to a couple people. I said, could you read this and ask me what you think? And some of the things, for example, like the beginning line, the members had a package of information. But I just think that we should elaborate a little bit more on that, because that was given by you on, what the exemptions were. And then the rest of it, a lot of it basically was a lot that Julie had given us on the state, but it doesn't really state there. So when you start reading this here, the people that did read it, that they said, I don't understand what any of this is. So,
Who did those minutes? Was that Liz Herrick? Because I know the first meeting, the first full meeting, Pam, I think, had to transcribe it from the video, but the name should be on the back of it.
yeah, this one is Elizabeth Herrick.
Yeah, so
But this was for
she did it.
this was for the first one.
Yeah.
But there was just a lot of things. I don't know if everybody else looked at that and said, geez, there's a lot of things I don't understand, and I just think there should be more with people saying, who was it that said this? So
This is a tough one too, because there was a lot at that first intermeeting, but I'm wondering if I could move that we postpone these minutes until we've had more time to look and maybe try to reflect a little bit, because to be honest, I skimmed them and I didn't even realize the detail is really off here.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment too, because minutes don't, we tend to get confused with minutes and recording things. Minutes don't have to say much at all.
It should be word by
Who
word.
was there, kind of what we discussed.
Motions made, actions taken.
Actions taken. So I get a little annoyed. I feel bad because people they want to see a transcription. I'm like, that's not what minutes are for. And so I'm a minimalist when it comes to them, as anybody that knows me knows. So as I say, if there's mistakes, fix mistakes. For sure. If you weren't present or something like that, something. But outside of that, I just think whatever shared should be accurate. But after that, I don't think a lot needs to go into the minutes. Again, as financially speaking, if you're paying somebody to take these minutes and they're spending 2 hours on them, and it's a 15-minute job, or what have you, that's again, we're just kind of wasting time and money.
Well, we chatted at the first meeting about assigning a clerk.
Right.
So that there was somebody in the group that was able to and I agree with you. I train parliamentary procedure for a living. So I hear you, I was like, this is, but it's not my place to say how to.
And I agree too, but the one thing I do look at is I will look at the simplicity of when something's said, who says it? That's all I need. And those are the things I like to see in minutes. And there's going to be a lot of things that are not in there. That's fine. But when you look for the first 2 pages, it's really, I think it just has to be a little more defined as far as who said.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that was Julie said that was from the state, but there's no mention. So it doesn't, there should be something on that. So.
We'll go back and try to rework those.
Good. The second one was this one here was much better.
Yeah.
This is the only one that I had.
But I think it's the same thing. I don't think it needs to be a verbatim of everything that Jeannie said or whatever.
Exactly.
I think that's, and the challenge is that we've made any decisions. Yeah. But I think it could be generalized for this is what was discussed in any next actions and outcomes. I don't think
I agree on that. But I'd just like to see a little bit more clarity as far as,
Yeah.
who said, who was saying all this stuff, because it
Yeah.
doesn't say anything.
So is there a second to postpone?
I'll give a second.
Okay. Jerry seconds. And all are in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, and with that, when she's
Next set,
reworking,
okay.
let her know that we don't
Yeah.
need,
Yeah,
no, I don't want it, I mean, if somebody else really
Verbatim
wants it, but that's
transcription.
not what it's for.
yeah.
Right, exactly.
It's just real basic and but what is printed should be.
I think sometimes it's challenging for the
It is.
recording secretary because of the topic.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't know the topic, it's
Oh, yeah,
a
hell, I
deep
don't,
dive.
I'm just, yeah.
So you certainly
It's
can't.
challenging. So, yeah, so she can keep it as,
So the next set are okay to approve? Those are
I think
March.
the next set, I just had one thing.
Okay, yeah.
Did you want to do the second set, or did you want to go on that one as far as, but they only had one thing on the second set that I wanted to
If
add.
there's only one thing, I think
Yeah.
you can move those
I guess
ahead.
we're looking at March 19th now, draft minutes.
Yeah, on the March 19th. Because I just thought this was important. This is on the third page. This second paragraph towards the end. And this was the discussion that we had where you were saying the 15% that when you looked at Durham, which I think is an important part of it. But nothing was said about what we had thought. So I just want to add after that. I don't think going back to 0 is fair. I just want to add after that. Jerry said, if the current exemption amounts were increased by 50%, the cash amounts of tax relief would be about the same that we were given before the revaluation. And that's just,
Can I give that
just,
to Ross?
yeah. And I don't know if you want to add yours 60%, because you said that.
Yeah, that's fine. That was more of a comment about
It was comments, I think it was comments.
tying it back to the revale.
Do you want that there?
Yeah, just hand it to me and we'll,
That was really.
Another reason why we shouldn't have transcription there, Yeah, some people that like lots of notes are very uncomfortable with me because I'm like, this was discussed, this is a motion, end the meeting. And is that everyone good enough? Good, let's go.
I'm gonna try to jot some notes down tonight, just so that we can, I might be able to, I'm not gonna assume the role of clerk right now, but I can maybe try to draft something as an example, just of what we probably should have. Like, I think, majority, and again, just as an attempt, because I agree with you, I'd like to have a clear record of what we talked about and anything major that was discussed. I mean, we're all in generalized
Yeah,
conversation at this
exactly.
point, so.
Yeah,
And I think the majority of us being here, we can look at it, we can recall what it was. But someone just picking it up, they have probably no clue of anything, so. Anyways, that's it.
okay. So.
What are we amending? That's my,
That was the March.
yeah, but what specifically?
I gave it to Ross, it was just at the end of the on the third page.
Jerry wants to
And
add
this is just included about this is just in regards to the percentages that we had talked about. I think that all three of them kind of important to be as far as in there. And that's all I had on that.
all right. So the motion would be to approve the minutes as amended for March 19th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right, let's move on before my son is headed come
Okay,
back.
vote on that, everyone, and,
Yep.
Oh, we were all
vote
in
on it.
favor? Yeah. I thought we were all in favor.
All in favor?
yeah, aye.
Done.
Did
Okay,
we already approve the February one at the last meeting?
We did, yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
did.
did.
Yeah,
one.
those are all set.
yeah.
So it's just January that's in limbo at this point.
Okay. So, discussion. I was thinking about this too, because this is just so challenging, and we could go around and around and around and really get down in the weeds. But I don't think it's gonna help us much. The more I thought about, and I've got comments to make about my thoughts and things I've looked up, but I think it's impossible to come up with a perfect solution. I want to make that statement before I think it's trouble to get too deep into the weeds. I know people do a lot of reading and research, and I think that'll help. But again, we need to pull it. When we get that information, we need to pull it back out of the weeds and get it back up to here, where it's something that's easier to digest. I just wanted to, and also I believe our focus today is going to be on the elderly exemptions, and maybe, if, and again, this is a big deal, and I have a feeling that, this is, again, once you make these changes, they sit for a while. Again, not that they're going to be accepted necessarily, but if they are, they're going to sit with the community for a number of years. Yep. So there's no need to go, oh, well, we didn't accomplish anything. We didn't put something forward yet, If you're going to go to this much trouble, do it right. But at that same time, when we make those thoughtful decisions, and looking at the other communities and the absolute impossibility to compare us to another community accurately because we are so unique, I do want to state that I think it's literally impossible to come up with a perfect formula.
Yep, I agree.
So that's what I like to say to kick off the meeting.
But at the same time, I think we need to use data as much as we can.
Oh, yes.
To come to a decision.
Use data, but know at the end of the day.
My feeling is in not just Exeter, but all the towns have been very arbitrary.
Yes.
In setting these amounts in the past.
Yeah, and I'm not saying arbitrary. I'm just saying that I don't think we're going to be able to. We can get lost in the weeds trying to find that perfect number, that perfect percentage, that perfect this, and all the data. I don't think that's a good investment of our time. I do think we need to have good information to make a decision, but I also think that I don't want us to try and spend all of our time trying to find out the perfect decision, because I don't believe there is one. But a good, solid decision based on the information that we have. Because we could go for the next 18 months.
You just spoke like everything I wanted to say, so thank you. That's what I said. I feel like we've spent some really good time talking about analysis and thoughts, but I think there isn't a perfect situation. And so I actually brought a recommendation tonight as an example to look at, because we could go round and round with the numbers, but the fact that I think we could put some basic principles of why we came up with what we did. But at the end of the day, I walked away from last month's meeting feeling like it was going to be really important that we understand the impact across the board. So I ran some numbers that would show what the increase, what that would be, like a tax. So I have some numbers on that tonight, so we could look like, what's this really going to cost everybody else? So yeah. But I think it's good because I'm not so sure that other municipalities whose rate have had any type of lengthy discussion around it. It's probably been pretty arbitrary. So I think you're right. If we can make the case to say we discussed it in detail, there's been some fact research. We've had some good numbers, but here's what we're presenting, and here's the impact.
Yeah, I have to agree with that too, because I look at the reality of what we have, and that's. Mark did something a couple weeks ago. He said, we're right, like, for example, on the income, we're right in the middle of all the towns. And so that shows that we haven't changed this in over 30 years. So we were high to begin with. So when you start looking at we were high to begin with, the analysis of anything we do, if you're looking at anything from taxes to Social Security, anything, it's hard to compare it because we were already one of the highest in the state.
Yeah. Right at the beginning.
So, we're finally, maybe in reality, maybe last time instead of adding $1, we should have deducted money. But we're looking now, I think we are finally to the point where we're in the middle is a nice place to be. You don't need to be on top. Right. You don't want to be on the bottom, but I don't think you need to be on top. So.
Yeah. And also the other thing that you always need to keep in mind, we have such extremes in Exeter. We have, and I had asked Jan, basically over 900 manufactured homes in Exeter. Over 900. So you have extreme affordability, if you will. And then you have houses that are over $1 million that are...
Both gap, isn't it?
Yeah. So, there's no, in the middle, you said income wise or what have you, but look what we're averaging to come up with that middle. So it's just, that's why my head was just spinning and I was like, boop,
Well,
pull it
that's
back.
we have to get to, Jeannie, what I think you were getting at was, you have to consider revenues, the tax coming in revenue, and so how that pays out.
If the voters are gonna vote on it, but that's what they're gonna look at. Well, how is this gonna impact the overall
Exactly,
picture?
so I think that's gonna be really important, so I don't wanna belabor this
And
too much.
to be honest, like I've gone from one extreme to kind of like what you're saying, Jerry, which is, we're actually in a pretty good position here in Exeter, but I do think, an adjustment is necessary. And to be honest, so I was looking at, I went and I took the three numbers and I was trying to figure out what's the rhyme and reason between why one is low and there's a difference. The average between the numbers, even though there's a big gap between a couple, is about 28,000. So I sat there for a little bit and I said, so
The average between what?
between the three exemption amounts was if you average the difference between, there's a difference between the low, the 65 to 74, and then you jump to the 75 to 79, and then when it goes to 80, there's three different numbers. And there's no rhyme or reason why some are higher than others, but the median is 28,000. So my thought was, at first, I was trying to calculate a percentage, but instead what I came up with overall was, instead of a 28,000, I said, what would it look like if we took and just equally increase the amount by 25,000, like just a slight increase in the amount of exemption, and got rid of the stupid dollar. Again,
Right.
lowered it down a dollar. So I ran.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I ran. So this is the 2024, and it's kind of silly, but the first one is 2000. This is from Janet. This is the exemptions, and I just edited it so at the top that you can see these are current exemptions. This is what it looks like, and then I took on the bottom, go all the way to the last page, and you'll see that overall the exemption, the taxes paid of the people that get exemption is 275,618. So out of all the exemptions, these folks are still paying.
How much?
It's on the very last page. I'm gonna give you this one.
I don't quite understand what you're.
I'm going to.
So the people that qualify for exemption are paying in 275.
We're still getting $275,000 in taxes from these people, even with the exemptions.
Well, I had just one quick question.
Wait. Let me go. Let me go through this at first. Let me just explain my thoughts because it's been a very long week for me.
Okay.
So, if you take that same amount and you increase the exemption amount just slightly to add $25,000, which isn't great considering the amount of the increases lately, and then you go to
Okay.
The
the last page.
What the bottom line?
The
would
bottom
be.
line is $239, so the delta is $36,515. Right?
So we're losing.
So we're losing it, but there's 153 homes, and then Janet sent me the data from the MX1, and to be honest, you guys, we have a ton of paying taxpayers. Like if you actually took that number and divided, it's about $5 a person. It is not a great, and that was just counting residential homes. Like I don't think that this is a huge impact on the overall tax base. To say we're gonna lose $36,000 if we increase it slightly to bring up. So you're talking about, we went from,
So 25,000 across the board is what you're saying.
right, so we increased the 151 to 177, again, took the dollar off, 250, because that seems silly. And then you've got the 261, 250 is the final, and in the middle, you brought it up to 208, 750. So it increases all of them. If you tried by percentage, you were going to get a higher amount the higher you went, and that didn't to me make sense.
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
it
so it
seemed like
shouldn't
we
be
needed
15
to.
across the board.
So what was your three numbers again? What was those?
177, 250 would be the bottom number. The middle one would be 208, 750.
177. I could make 10. What's that again? I'm sorry.
177, 250.
Okay.
And then 208, 750, and 261, 750. And it's making an investment to help at least a little bit of the hurt of the people who maybe once had to have these increased assessments without hurting the rest of the taxpayers by much. It really isn't like drastic. I mean, if we really tried to like match it per number or by like the fact of all I was going to say, it was a 59% income gap in Social Security between 2008 and today. I was like, that's crazy. But they say there's a lot of factors that don't come into play, like the cost of healthcare. So it's like, okay. So that was is there logic behind that number? Not really, because I think it's going to be really hard to quantify anything at this point based on, but at least it brings us, it still keeps us clearly centered around what other people are doing. It's maybe not as extreme as some people have gone on the other end, because I saw one place was at 350. Now we don't need to go that high. But I think it's saying, yes, we can support a little more based on the amount of increases, but not enough that everybody's going to say, oh my God, no way, that's really going to have a huge impact. I mean, it's minimal compared to what I thought we could do.
I want to go around the room and have everybody speak. I just want to make sure, I'm going to say, well, first thing really quick is that the population always changes. So I wouldn't base everything on, I think this is huge help and I really like it, and I may just go with it, but I just want to say, you always got to remember population changes. So keep that in mind when you're kind of thinking about, because right now this is what will happen, but what 15, 20 years from now, so anyways.
Oh yeah, but I think at the end of the day, when this goes out to voters, I think it's going to have a note about the tax impact, or we're going to have to base it on what we have now, what we have to go on.
Oh yeah.
And I hear you.
Nope, I agree.
But
part of the problem when comparing it to anybody else is that's old data now, because it's the latest data that's available from the state is 2023. So there've been 2 cycles of town meetings to change it. And that was actually one of the things I was going to do for our next meeting was, I know at least 2 towns voted on changes in
25.
March. Yeah. So just caution that it's a moving target.
so are you talking about again, I think we'd have to flush out the tax impact when it comes down to when we're ready to go out to ballot. But I don't think that much would change between now and then. At least it's not an extreme situation.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you're gonna, part of your comment was the adjustments are small, more in line with what other towns are doing, but maybe they're doing something different. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, but I would say I'm only making that as a comment. I don't think that would be based on our logical reason of why we're doing this. I think we're doing this to try to help people stay in their homes and give some relief.
The thing that I was concerned about is I didn't bring it with me tonight, but I looked at 2008 to 2023, and there's a pretty steady decline in the number of exemptions and the dollar amount of the exemptions because these things stayed static for so long. So how do we sort of factor that in, I guess?
I think first we have to decide the exemption amount and where we want to stand on that, and then the next conversation we have has got to be about the income limits, whether or not, maybe not, if we even have to adjust that. And I think that's where you're seeing the decline.
Yeah.
Well, if that makes
sense.
I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to have comments. So other thoughts on what she just presented? That's the income. About, the 25,000 or.
Julie, is this a better conversation than you're having at the state level?
Yes.
I would.
I think.
Basically, at the state level, any kind of tax exemption or abatement is pretty much no. because of the revenues.
Yeah, be like an insurance company now.
Yeah. And every year we have 6-7 bills on some kind of change to either veterans credits or tax exemptions. None of them change the ages of anybody or income levels.
Well, and I think what I like here is that I know that the majority of manufactured housing for the people who qualify will be mostly covered, and if not, that the very little bit they have to pay in. But I do think that that's that gap that you were talking about. So I do feel like it's a little give to the situation without making it so that people feel like everybody else is, like you said, everybody else has got a tax bill too. They've got to like say, oh gosh, like.
Yeah, and it's getting scary, so,
These numbers are surprisingly low to me. The total that is actually collected.
Yeah, I think that's my
but
reaction.
that's just of the exemption people, yeah.
But I think the idea of trying to make it revenue neutral, at least as a first pass, I think that makes some sense. I think you brought that up.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that thought because I didn't know whether we were starting from something that was fair or not.
Well,
So saying we want to keep it the same, I don't know. So I just want to make sure I say that. I don't know if that's the right thing, the right goal to keep it the same because I didn't know.
My goal is to figure out what it should be.
With how much valuations have gone up, that suggested increase seems quite low.
It does.
but it doesn't really, because the valuation goes up, but by the same token, the tax rate comes down. So, the reality of last year's valuation change on most people is between $200 and $500. And what I was looking at is, I don't know where the town, you made a comment last week about, like right now, we've got an assessment of like 37 million, and it could mushroom up to like 55, which I agree with. But that 55 is not any increase to the town. Now, going down in price is okay. I mean, what I did is revenue neutral, and I see the figures are much higher. I'm not opposed to lower figures, because the town does save money, obviously, with that. I mean, because these figures right now, obviously, revenue neutral is still quite a bit lower than revenue
These
neutral.
numbers
The numbers that Jeannie just
Brock
gave us, right?
just gave you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a cost to what Jeannie just gave you, though.
Yeah, we
It's
are.
not revenue neutral.
No.
Well, there is a cost,
At a
but
cost.
compared to the cost that we have right now.
What do you
I
mean?
guess I'm
What is
right.
that?
No,
Yeah,
there's a greater cost to this.
I can't see where the greater cost is.
Well, it's a delta of about $36,000, $36,515 if you look at the difference between.
Right, but what do you,
It's more of a
but what
cost.
are you basing that on is what I'm looking at. Because when you're basing it on, everything being the same, nothing. When you look at the tax rate going down, the valuation is just a figure, as well as the tax rate. They're both just figures. What's important is what do you pay in taxes? And that's where the bottom line is. If you're paying $8,000 this year, and you have a revaluation, everything changes around, and now you're paying $8,200, things didn't change much at all. And that's the way I look at it, because when you get one thing that changes, everything can change in line. And so that's why I'm saying
Except our reevaluation wasn't proportionate for some people.
It wasn't.
So you've got people that saw a
realize, right.
50% increase in their bill overall, so.
And that's why I put the smaller numbers up higher, for that reason.
The smaller number.
I mean, that's why I put my numbers up higher, because the people that were getting hit were the people that were really need to be back to that point, because they were like 120, 140%, where everybody else was 60. So I'm looking at the amount of tax, the amount of money that comes in is going to be the same. It's just if the money is going to be the same, we just go up a little bit, then it should save that. I don't see how it's going to cost the town more.
But if you're raising the exemption amount, you're definitely creating a dollar gap between what it was and what it will be.
Right, but if you look at these figures here, for example, the dollar gap is small. I mean, what's that? I did it on the other page here. Let's see.
Maybe what needs to be done is those numbers need to be plugged into this data set to show what the difference
I should have done that. I should have done it from last year. I think it would have shown you where it had crept up from last year to like what that delta was. But again, I'm looking forward at this point, and like I'm trying. I think we could, like said, all around the way, just like Chris said when we opened this meeting, we could go back and forth on we could have conversations for months about. I think at some point I think we do have to realize that the tax footprint on the entire community is a big conversation right now. And I think as we propose something, I think a little more relief is better than doing nothing at all.
I don't think, again, we're not here to make the goal. I didn't join this committee to make people that are on elderly exemptions whole again. Didn't do that. That's not our charge. It's not. It may be what you want to do, but it's not our charge. It may be what, in my heart, I want to do. It is not my charge. We have to remember that. We are not here to do that. And if we can't get away from that path, then we need to either stop or you need to drop off or something. I mean, it's hard, but it's not the right thing. It's not why we're here. So I'm not going to, personally, I'm not going to vote for anything or support anything that says, well, this makes people whole again. I got to say that again. And makes me sound cold. I'm not cold, but that's not why we were brought in. Hell, I was hoping we'd be talking about 79E and making adjustments. That's off the table. So the thing I really wanted to do is gone. So, but I know that what we're supposed to be doing is looking at this and going, are things balanced and right? I think we all agree that the tax increase went up a lot more on some people than others. We agree with that. I think we all agree that some adjustments should be made. I also want to say that, and I can, Russ, I want to ask you this. Most people, every year, their taxes go up a little. All right?
Yes.
So if mine go up a little, then everybody's needs to go up a little. Not down. I'm sorry, it just shouldn't go down. We were generous when we started. So I don't think we're going down, I don't think is the right thing either. I think going up fairly is the right thing. That is my opinion. I'm going to state it very clearly. Going up a little, and not everybody's going to be the same. Because oh my gosh, I'll just look at these and this will give me some direction. Oh God, no. They are so all over the board, with, this one up by this much, this one up by that much. It's nuts. And so that doesn't give you your nice, clean, simple answer. But at the end of the day, we have to remember, what's the fair, right thing to do? An adjustment, we all agree. Does everybody's tax go up a little? Or a lot? Yes, or some. So whether a person goes up by $2 is something that says, I paid a little extra, they're going to pay a little extra. So I don't think getting back to zero is necessarily the right thing to do. And I don't think that coming in less is the right thing to do, although it's close, which is great. But I think that if it's possible, and I don't know if it is, if we can get it so that it's more of a level playing field, not 50% tax increases. I mean, that's, oh my gosh, can you imagine? If your taxes went up by 50%. That's not right, especially people that are elderly and on super limited incomes. I mean, I feel for people, they're in that situation, and I pray that I'm not in that situation someday. And I do believe that, there's exemptions for a good reason, and I totally support them. But again, I feel that we should make an adjustment that doesn't go down and it doesn't shoot for where we were before. I don't think that's right. And I think it's also something that I don't know if anybody knows it, and I certainly don't, but there's a lot, I don't know actually. The number of exemptions, the percentage of exemptions in Exeter for elderly versus the total number of people in town, the percentage of that total population, how does that compare to other towns? Is 10% of Exeter that's getting an elderly exemption? Is it 30%? Is it 2%? And what are other towns doing too? So that's, I mean, there's so much you could,
Well, it's 153 households,
right,
according to this, so that's out of a total of 6,600.
Yeah, and I would push back to say, again, I don't know what relevance it would help in this conversation to even understand that. I think it would just be another data set.
I know.
Without clear. And I just want to follow up and just say, I don't think that anybody here is trying to make anybody, the whole, people whole again. I don't know where that comment's coming from, but I would say that I think it is.
It was said a lot.
But I think that's an assumption and a perspective you might have, but I'm not sensing that at all. I'm sensing that people are really just trying to look at this to figure out what's best for everybody, and I think we've had a lot of conversation, which is good, but I haven't, I don't think it's that. I just want everybody to feel good about what I see, is I think everybody has a good thought on it, and I think it's good to share collectively. But again, I agree with the whole, like, we gotta get.
Yeah, and
less.
so, for example, one of the reasons this came up at the select board is, and I should have asked Janet this before the meeting, but you do have to prove a certain amount of your assets, et cetera, but what kind of proof do you do? Do you just write about it?
That's sure. Really important.
And so should we be asking for W-2 form or, whatever?
Well, I think that you have to provide documentation.
Right, but I think the question from the board, from select board, what my understanding is as well, is are we doing enough to verify?
Right.
Are we doing enough to make sure that when people come in that it, and it's hard, I mean, that's a dollar question as well as staffing, but
I wasn't
yeah.
sure we're using is there's a state form. And if we're not using it, we should adopt that.
Oh, no, we're using the state form.
We use it.
But it's a matter of the backup data.
Right.
Where's the verification
The
on
state
it?
form,
Right.
when you sign that, it's under penalties of perjury.
Yeah, same with our local form.
Right.
You sign it under penalties of
Yeah, I
perjury,
do know, so
so-
we had a copy of that, and here we have it, it says right on it, yeah.
There's a certain amount of tax avoidance somebody can have.
Right.
That's to Jerry's point.
Yeah.
That's the example that Jerry gave at
Yeah.
the January meeting,
Yeah.
I think, when he talked about putting something in a trust, or
Yeah.
there was some
Oh, yeah.
There are other things you can do.
some kind of
Yeah.
maneuvering within the program itself that's sort of not, you
Defined.
can't avoid it.
Yeah.
It's hard to avoid.
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually address
But
that?
if you have the
Within the program, again, the parameters of qualifying for the program.
Yeah.
That was sort of the, somebody hands over their house.
Exactly.
Multiple generations live in the same house, I think you were saying, Jerry.
Right. I've seen a couple that have abused the system.
Yeah.
But I just had a question, because we just got Jeannie's information, I haven't had time to really look over it. But see, when I look back, for example, the 120, with the 152, 251, at the old tax rate of the 2678 was 4,078. So what I looked at is that was, to me, was a point that I didn't want to go over. That was a revenue neutral base. So I looked at 50%. You look at the new one, 50% increase going from 152 to 228 at the 1779, now it's still about 4,062. So they're both the same. Now, I'm not saying I want to be revenue neutral, I just want to find where the basis was. And that's where I find it is. So from there, it's how much we go down. So I'm just trying to figure out.
That would be making people whole, though, right?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So I'm trying to figure out if this is the same amount of money, why would this being less cost us more? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Because you would be giving slightly more exemption credit to households for a certain amount of their tax liability. So that would go down. And all I did was plug in the new numbers to calculate the same
Your number is
math.
a lot lower than his, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
you're much
Right.
lower than mine. But mine is revenue neutral, and that's what I'm trying to figure
But
out.
why would yours be revenue neutral if you were
Because the
giving?
tax base is lower. It would not do it dealing off of a $26 tax base. We're dealing off a $17 tax base. It's just like
Well,
right, your
these figures
taxes.
are based on the 2024. This is 2020. You might have taken 2023. I'm not sure,
Well, I
but
had to go 2023. 2023 is because they went up in 2024.
Correct.
And when they went up in 24, that's a very distorted figure to use because some people are paying more, like for example, the mobiles are paying more because the increase was a lot higher. I just took the generic figure of where it was at to make it revenue neutral. So I look at those figures, the town would actually be paying out less rather than more. But I haven't looked at your figures yet, because we just got them.
Because my understanding on this form is that this is the second half, right? The first columns are hidden. We looked at 23 beside 24. And 24 is what we hit last year, what the tax bills were based on. So it says the assessment increase, and it shows in the second to last column, the taxes paid for the 2024 billing cycle, and it shows you the amount that were paid, and it shows you the increase.
Right.
So if you take that and instead adopt, again, the tax rate may change from year to year, I don't know. But based on this information, if you took and increased the exemption amount and just carried the same formulas over, an example, here's an example. So look at the very first line, right? That homeowner, whoever it is getting was getting 152, and they were going to pay $5,215 for 2024. But with the new one, they're going to pay a little less at $4,770. So it would reduce their exemption. So I believe that the approach to this is accurate because I'm looking at the same data set. So it's just increasing the amount of exemptions. So the amount that they're paying in is slightly reduced because they're getting more of the exemption.
But see, I think you're looking at those figures. I'm looking at the whole town at one figure. And that's where I'm coming up with the difference. I'm just trying to follow where the logic is, how we're paying more.
But the balance of those two would have to be spread out over the rest of the homeowners. I mean, somebody has to absorb that $36,000. It's not a lot, right?
It's more than that. We're forgetting something. It just hit me. I'm like, kept saying, you can't say revenue neutral because we're getting in, whether we get in 36,000 less, but costs around the town have gone up. So
why?
Costs around the town go up every year, right?
Budgets and taxes increase.
But this is all based on what we know now.
This is based on a known, I think Jeannie's numbers are based on a known environment.
Right.
So this is a
At a
known,
point in
this is a
time.
known environment.
Right, exactly.
It's a snapshot,
Yeah.
is what it is.
It could be different, but for this set of data, this is the difference, so.
But I think what you're saying is if taxes go up, which they do, that these numbers change. And so the value of the exemption, where that falls, people would pay
A little more.
a little more in taxes in 2025, which is true. Based upon these numbers.
To me, it's the smartest thing that we can do to help in some way. I mean, that's where we're at. Like, to me, we have to look at the big picture. But this is something, because I think when we start getting into incomes, I was thinking of that logic. We start getting into incomes increasing. That's a lot of unknown. We won't even be able to track that because we don't know how many people that maybe would begin to qualify that could have a much larger impact. So I think that this is to me, this is the easiest, safest. Okay, this is not a big deal. Let's start by giving a little bit of help. It's not a lot, but it's something. But it also helps people that have maybe, like some of the people if their values are below 177, whatever that 7,000 is, they're likely living on pretty low incomes in manufactured housing. So it's going to be a big support for that issue.
Yes.
But I also don't want it to hurt other people.
Right, and I get that, and again, in my heart, I agree with all that. But I also don't want to, again, because if we use those numbers, we're going backwards revenue-wise, which is not a fair thing for the whole community. Again, I said it could be just a couple dollars to go up. So I'd be curious to see, I just would like to know, with what you did there, if we did, and these are very close, but it's a little bit less. If you did a 15% increase for the first group, and then 10% for the next two, the number that I have, so the first one, instead of being 177,250, I end up with 175,88. Very close, but a little lower. And then the next group, instead of being 208,750, I get 202,126. And then instead of 261,750, I get 259,876. So again, it's a little bit lower, but they're solid percentages. 15% increase, 10 and 10. It's a little bit lower than yours.
One more time, I just want to.
But
So
it's certainly,
what's your logic behind the 15 and then 10 and 10 and not vice versa?
just because honestly, because if we did 15 across the board, it jumped way up.
No, I'm talking about the opposite, because I'm thinking, so you're 80, you're more than likely to lose your spouse or partner at 80. Why not increase that 15% and make the others 10 if that's the...
Well, I'd be more than happy to do 10 across the board. I just noticed that if you did a 15% increase, I don't know what my numbers are anymore, it really jumped up a lot for that last
across the that's what I was trying to do earlier when I took that. I did the same thing and I was like, ooh, wait.
Yeah, it was too much of a jump, so that's why I dropped it down. Now I'm happy to look at doing 10% across the board. Again, we're seeing a big increase in that number for the exemption. You're going from, I'm sorry, I can't see anything.
While you're looking at that, the 80 and up seem to be the majority of the exemptions too.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually in our town.
Yeah.
It kind of struck me a little bit that the 65 to 74 cohort was pretty small. I would have expected it to be larger.
But I think that's because people qualify more because they end up losing an income. That's also on my mind too, is that 80% higher because you have a lot of widows, right? You have a lot of people that lose that second income and then their income is reduced and they qualify.
Yeah.
And people are working longer.
Could you put those three figures out once again?
That's very true.
I didn't catch all those, the 15, 10, and 10.
175,088, 202, 126, and then 259,876. So you'd still be going again, and like I said, I'd be happy to give 10 across the board. Because again, you're going up, you're giving people a higher threshold, which is helping people, but not, I just would like to see how that impact would be. Trying again to keep things fair across the community,
So we have to run that against a budget, whether, as a comparison for this year's budget and last year's budget or whatever. We made that change then.
Yeah.
What would have been the difference for the following year overall?
Yeah.
For the town's revenue to offset, to pay for everything.
Well, I'm still
It's
saying
just
this, the 2024, I believe, is based on current budget. Am I right? She ran this. I mean, this is, I don't know, it's the same.
But currently our rate, because of the evaluation, our rate went like.
Right, but this is on the new evaluation. These numbers are based on the new
values.
On the new values.
So going forward,
Yeah, I don't think we need to look back a year.
they would link.
No. I'm going to stand on, I think.
I'll just remind people too that this comes off the top of the valuation.
Yeah.
So the way it's applied is a little bit different than a straight dollar amount.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I think the way we're analyzing it is the correct way to do it, but the actual exemptions come off the total valuation
I think we all get that.
number. So
I don't know, makes my head spin.
I honestly think, based on what I know, and like you said about the wealth gap and the extremism in this town, I'm going to stand on a little bit higher of a number, in my opinion, and I think that we can. That's just how I feel. I feel like we can. I think that overall, I think it's going to help people stay living in Exeter, and it's a hard thought, but it's also, we were asked to look at this to see if there's a need for it, and I think that there is, based on all the facts. I think there's a need.
Yeah, and I think the big thing when you look at the mobiles are going to be the people that that will do okay with it. Everybody else isn't going to, which that's immaterial as far as you have to decide on what you want to do, because you have to look at some of these mobiles who are at 30,000, 40,000. So they weren't even close to the 152. Now they're over 150.
Way over that 150 value.
So now, before they had a long ways to go. So this is what I'm saying. I'm not following the figures, because with me the math is the math, and I'm looking, quite honestly, if we say we spent 700. We'll say we spent 700,000 in 1923, if we went off those figures, we would probably drop down to 550 in 2025.
I do think the figures like this, though, Jerry, actually cover a lot of the manufactured housing, which I think is great. And what I'm saying, that manufactured housing is what houses our lowest of income folks. That is where I think that we've got to think like that. Like these are the folks that really need. And I'm not saying that other people don't qualify, because I know that they do, except that they probably have a lot more to rely on. And I can tell you, like, I've helped people apply for services and seen like $1,200 a month payment, so that they're living off way more than even the average Social Security. And like, it's like, whoa, like, I don't know, but I do think that if they qualify, but I do think it will help. And I do think it's needed. Like I said, and there's a whole bunch of other conversations to have about this, right? About income and the other one, just
the assets.
Income, assets, and verification. Now we do have to talk about that eventually.
Right, but you look at the actual house that went up that was at 300,000, that's gone up to 500. Doesn't help them at all.
Well, they're still getting that. They're still going to get more of an exemption off the top of their exemption to qualify for more than they did. They would never.
Yeah, not much though, because if your taxes have gone up 60% and you're getting 10 or 15% break, then you're just going to have to pay more. Yeah. So this is why I kind of look at, I'm not looking at revenue neutral as a basis, but I'm also looking what's fair for everybody. And that's why I think those figures that you gave are a little bit lower. And I think if you start doing the addition, which you probably could do, you're going to find we're going to be spending a lot. The town will be spending a lot less, which I'm not saying that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, Jeannie's model I think works because it's 2024 and going forward, and it calculates the actual bill amounts. And I think what could be done is that your numbers, Jerry, could be plugged into this model, and we could see the difference at the end of the analysis as to what the delta is.
And an interesting fact set there on the evaluation, though, is that the stick-built evaluations were far lower than manufactured was. So I think that there's also that gap as well. So like when we think about the people who now have the extended tax bills, so if your tax bill, if your assessment only went up, I think the average was 51%, but I know some stick bills were lower, but you're in manufactured housing that jumped 149%, we're all paying the same tax rate. So in essence, I think the percentage overall of the increases were far greater in manufactured housing than they were in stick-built housing. So I think, and again, I'll still go back to say maybe with the exemption of River Run or whatever, with some of the nicer houses, most folks living in the manufactured housing who really need this exemption, this would certainly offset and not leave them with a bill that they really just can't follow.
I just had a question on the our last meeting. You had said, for example, the mushrooming. We could be at 37 million now, and now we could be up to 55 million as far as property value.
Right.
When you look at the 37 million, we'll say you've got actual cash coming out of it of 700,000. What is your feeling and the feeling of the select body? Are you looking to still be at that plateau, or are you looking to be lower than that plateau? Because it's a question that, to me,
well, are you talking like a tax cap?
No, not a tax cap. I'm saying the money.
I think I know what you're saying, Jerry.
Yeah, because we used to put almost $1 million a year. Now we're down to 700,000.
Right. Well, that number is sort of my opinion is that number is sort of an arbitrary number. At the end, I mean, it's a real number. It's a real number, but it doesn't. It's not necessarily representing the right amount. And if it dropped, then to me that would mean just more of your property value would become in the program would become taxable, which means more people would be paying into the system, and sort of speaks to Chris's point about. Is the adjustment something that you want to keep at the same 37 million, or is it, you adjust higher number and you have a lower tax rate, changes that 700,000 number to 500,000, but more people are paying in, is that a bad thing, or does it need to be tweaked more so that doesn't happen?
My math, again, I'm always bad. You might touch a calculator and that comes out wrong. But when I did, I played with a bunch of numbers, and the 10 and the 15 was really high. But if we, again, could be wrong, but if we did 10% across the board, it's close to what you came up with, but a little bit lower, which might mean that instead of going back 36,000, maybe it's neutral, maybe it's a couple dollars more, but I'd like to, again, we're talking not a lot here, but I'd like to see, does that change it at all? Or maybe it means nothing at all. I just really struggle with going backwards.
And to clarify Jerry's argument, I think what Jerry was saying is he's concerned about the single-family home that went from 300,000 to 500,000. Mm-hmm. So the value jumped 200,000. So a 10% adjustment. What's that?
Did we have stick-built houses that jumped up that percentage?
Yes.
Mine went way up.
Yeah, we did.
Look at the very first one.
Yeah, but the thing is in how far your house went up.
Right.
It's the tax rate. You
Look at the very
That's
first
how much
one.
you
Jerry,
pay.
I get that.
it's
But
The very
again,
first one on this list.
That's the one I was just reading off, yeah.
It went from,
Assessment increase was 154.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't even look at that, yeah.
so here's the other thing too, is that, I'm like, my assessed value of my home's gone way up, but guess what? I'm not gonna sell my house for the same price it was assessed at before. So you gotta remember that if the assessed value goes up, that means people are able to sell their manufactured homes for more.
Most people aren't trying to sell their
I
homes.
know.
Okay, where are they gonna go?
I know.
Anyways, it's a double-edged sword, because
Well,
It is, and
it helps some, but you hurt others.
And again, I don't think, and again, I get it, we were asked to take a look at this, but there's a reason why the exemption program exists, and that is to help people
Yeah.
that, and again, we're gonna end up at a place, we're in a state where property tax drives everything, and unfortunately, we don't have sales and income tax, but we don't, and at the end of the day, our young workers, our senior retired need to be able to stay in this town. They're the lifeblood of this town. And I really think that I don't think it's gonna blink an eye if the tax imprint on people is a few dollars a year. I don't think they are if we say, look, we're trying to figure out a way to help people. At the end of the day, if not, that I don't know, it hasn't come to fruition yet. You're gonna have people that are either not going to be able to pay that tax bill. They're going to come to the town for help anyhow. That's probably where they're going to come. And I think it's 50. Like I said, I was literally running numbers at 20% because of what I was seeing in the gap. And I was like, nope, that's way too much to put. Yeah. I do think that I came down to 20. I think a flat rate across the board is a slight adjustment for people. It gives them a little more exemption without really impacting the rest of us.
the gross levy is 65 million. So
What does that mean?
that means the tax levy, the total levy of the town between the municipal, the schools, and the county is about $65 million. So you're in that. I mean, to adjust the program by this, I think what you're suggesting is reasonable, given what the total levy is, and the shift wouldn't be that drastic.
Yeah, and I honestly, God, I agree with everything that you're saying, in principle, but I'm just going back to what's our charge, and and the things that we're saying here that I agree with is that we're helping people. We need to help people, and we need to give it kind of back so they can stay in their homes. But that's not our charge. Even if I agree with it, it's not our charge. I agree that we need to make an
But
adjustment.
Chris, our charge is our charge, but the fact that these exemptions exist are about people. I hear you, I know what the charge is, I was pretty clear when I took it on, but there is a program that's based around helping people stay in their homes. So there is a side of that, you have to say, how do we help?
Yeah.
And we can't go, to me, I get it, that other people, I don't want to go present something out to the voters, have them say, no freaking way, I already have a big enough tax bill, we've got to find something that's a little more palatable, but that people are encouraged by. But I would say this, I think the other thing we need to think about is it's very possible that tax levy is going to increase when some of these federal programs are being cut, start coming back at the state. I'm sorry,
Yes,
but
it will.
that's going to have a huge impact in New Hampshire because we're going to have a bigger problem than we've ever imagined, and it's going to cost burden low-income people even more. And I'm just saying, like, I would love to see us move something forward that is at least a little bit of relief so that people can think about that, but it may be a bigger conversation down the road. And hopefully we can talk about it then, but it's coming.
Well,
There are other things that come into this, and I know we're concentrating on the elderly exemption, so that's a definable piece, right now, and it's a big one. But then there's the other exemptions, like the solar one, I have to say. We put it in, but we didn't define what the exemption would be. So instead of having it be like a rebate that every installation gets $7,500 or something, right now they get the installation cost. And for some, it's over 10,000. For some, that's 1,100, depending on how many panels they have.
It's 100% exemption. So whatever you put into it, you get exempted
But if we
For how many
change
years?
permanently.
but we can change it at town meeting.
We
We can set a rebate amount, just say 5,000. That's it.
A flat dollar value amount to be exempted. Yeah.
And that, and watching what I have to sign about approving these kind of things, that's a big chunk of money. It's a lot bigger chunk of money than we're seeing here.
Yeah, and for people that can afford to install solar, like you just go like,
I know.
But I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-solar.
Yeah, so I understand why we might have to return to this after we look at all the other ones. So I think coming up with
I didn't know that about the solar. I wasn't sure what it
Yeah,
was.
it was put in at 100% exemption. That was a while ago.
I didn't realize it was every year.
Yeah, you get the permanent. Well,
It decreases
if
every
your
year.
house is worth $300,000 and you have 30,000 off on a solar exemption, and then your house goes to 400,000, you still get
Still
that
only get the
30.
30, yeah.
You still get that 30,000 off the four. Now it's 430, but
Yeah.
you're getting 30 off still, and it's perpetual. It happens every year.
So
Is that the average solar exemption, like 30 grand?
no, they're less than that, but some of them are quite large, 10,000.
It would seem to me a smart move on that exemption
year,
would be
that's
to have it drop.
Oh, yeah.
So in the first year, maybe
Yeah.
it's full value, and then the second year is 50%, and then
Well,
the third
because
year
the
is
efficiency
nothing.
drops too. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth as much, say, first years as 10 years
And who
in.
verifies if they're even still operable after a
They have
decade?
to, they have to submit bills and whatnot.
Oh, we have so many headaches ahead of us.
But, well, no,
Well,
but
that's
I'm
what
just
I
saying, I'm just saying that we come up with a decision, one of these things, the percentage looks really great, works out, nicely, we understand the impact it's gonna have on either end of the spectrum, and fine. And then let's look at the other ones and see if that revenues offset will help us with what the, town's total revenue.
I love what you're saying.
Yeah, the big picture.
That's a great comment.
Yeah, because this might change more to help more people if we, spread around the cost of the give back on solar arrays or.
Yeah.
I think it'll
I
get
didn't
hard
realize
once
solar
you
had
get
much of
to
an impact.
Yeah, once you get to veterans credits, though, it's going to change to Delta again.
Again, that's what maybe.
Maybe.
So I was
Yeah.
mistaken. I thought this was our biggest.
Well, it is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
just because it's seen and affected by, seen by people who aren't affected, I guess.
Yeah.
And then felt by the people who are affected.
Yeah. I just thought the total dollar. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
It just,
No, that's correct. The total dollars are the biggest impact
Okay.
in the elderly exemption program as far as the dollars that are shifted from one class to another. That is the case. The veterans credits are about 350,000. So and that's a straight credit off your bill. So that's money we're baking into the tax rate for others to pay in a direct way. If that makes sense, the credit comes off the bill, and the dollars are raised in the tax rate to pay for it.
So that's a different kind of calculation than what we're looking at here.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when we get there, I think the important first question to ask ourselves is there a change that we need to make, or what would the case be to change it? Like, not just because we want to, because we think it's really about like to me, I think about things like that. I think, okay, it's really great because everybody loves to vote on things that are veteran related, but on the other end, it will have a pretty big impact, and it may alternatively I mean, we have a pretty good,
If we go from the current Veterans Credit Program to the All Veterans Credit, Janet had given me a calculation at one point in time. I don't know if it's changed or would change in her mind, but it was $300,000 more. So the cost was an additional $300,000.
And the definition of veteran has changed.
Yeah.
I think the one that we're using right now is somebody who's seen
combat,
in combat.
yeah, and then
All
also
veterans credit is for people who served even if they got
honorary
separated.
discharge, yeah.
No, there's another one separated.
DD2, as long as they have the DD 214, right, they qualify. Which is kind of crazy.
16.
But I only say that
Go
because
to Norwich University as going into the Army and you don't make the, I have a niece that did this. She didn't gain enough weight, so she got rolled into the general population, but she began.
my husband was in the reserves when he was like 17 years old. He still has a, like he can go to Home Depot and give his forms and get, I think that's what the All Veterans Credit is.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, I would care to bet too that our senior veterans are going to be, and we have a lot of veterans that are on lower incomes, and I think I think this is going to help that as it is. But
Right, I'm not saying that we need to, it's something we need to take into account. So I think if we get to an agreement point on what kind of change we want to make to these, then we go on and take a look at the impact of the other things that we have and figure out what it is right now.
What's the best package?
Yeah,
So to speak.
because don't we have a $500 credit now, but we could go higher?
Yeah.
Like couldn't it versus the all-in? You could
Yes,
actually
it can go
take
higher.
that number and
It
because
can
I
go
think you can go up
750.
to $750. Yeah. So I mean that would be
Or
another.
you can leave it at 500 and not end up taking.
That too.
Yeah, no one says you have to give everybody something, We're not, middle school trophies for
I don't
participation.
qualify for any of these things.
I didn't either. I didn't do anything.
I said like
64.
I would be happy just to move past like a soft approval of moving something forward that indicates we're going to do that so that we can, because I think next we could wrap this up, not tonight, but talking about income limits, because that makes my head scream. And then the other thing, income and
Yeah, Mark's analysis was really
and what?
impressive.
Oh, and assets. And assets was the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could do that next meeting. Does anybody have a proposal other than percentage, I think I'm down to 10%, I think. But I would say across the board, or Jeannie's 25,000 per
staff.
Per category.
per category, yeah. Does anybody have another proposal that they'd like to put forward?
Well, personally, I think that's a little low. I think it helps everyone in mobile, but I think it screws everybody in the house. So I could
What's
look
a
at
little
back. I could go back and look at how many mobiles, how many houses, how many
Jeannie's
people.
is low.
I do.
Well,
When it
yours
comes
is
to
even lower than
houses-
mine.
I know.
Hers is lower than mine, so.
Right, that's what I mean. I think.
He's not even looking at me.
Off the top of your head, Mark,
for
you said,
example.
without the examples, tell
Jerry's
me,
usually not the highest numbers.
I'm not.
what would you suggest would be,
I know.
let's just say, would it be a 50? Would it be?
No, I mean, with me, 50 was revenue neutral. I figure we'd be coming in somewhere 35 to 40%. Because what I'm looking at is the amount of money that we actually did spend. We don't want to spend, to me, I don't want to spend any more. I'd like to spend a little less. And coming in at a lower percentage, we would be spending less than 50%.
Oh my God, I have no idea what you said.
Well,
Yeah, that's
And I'm not saying it's you.
confusing me.
No, because.
Very much, but.
Yeah.
Margie, can you bring that back around and you're
What's your thought, Mark?
Yeah.
You want to be 60,
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I'm having a hard time with all the numbers because I haven't
know,
really
yeah,
dug in
I
as
don't
much as
understand
you
this.
guys.
I've got a head cold.
No matter what, if you
and-
increase, it's not neutral. There's going to be a tax impact to everybody.
There is going to be, but see what happens. What you basically gave, and what you gave, you're basically taking the mobiles and you're bringing them almost back to zero. But if you take a house, for example, that was at 300,000 and the value went from 3 to 5, and there's a lot of them in this town that did, you got a $200,000 difference or $3,500 in tax bill, they will not get to that point because they're already below the thresholds that you established. So with theirs are already increased 3,500. So you're keeping one basis low, but the rest of them are all.
Is that factoring in the lower tax rate? That doesn't make sense.
That's the nature of
No, because a household has
giving an exemption.
It doesn't matter because the lower tax rate doesn't matter because you keep a figure. You kept a figure on that, like on the
I'm just asking you,
152.
I'm going to be
as long as you
very,
factor it in.
very crude in my example here.
Please,
But
that would help me.
you have a long skinny balloon.
Yeah.
You give a credit or exemption, you
Yep.
squeeze down the middle, the other two sides go up. So
That's me,
Jerry,
on the other
you're
end.
gonna get what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm looking at, when you look at the final analysis, you're still going to look at, we'll say 700,000 that we were given to the people in this town. It's going to drop to maybe 500,000. The people in the lower categories, like the mobiles, are going to be fine, but the other people are going to be screaming at you guys because they're going to say,
Take it, that's
But they've always qualified for the same exemptions regardless. It's like if I live in a house that in that case, I'm going to sell that house and make my assets and probably buy a mobile. I'm just saying, like, I'm saying, like, the people that are living there probably are not the same. If at some point in their life they were able to afford this house that's now worth $600,000, I'm going to be crude for a minute and say I don't think it's as impactful as it is to people that are making $15 an hour and feeding 2 kids. Like that's what I'm saying that because they don't qualify anyhow. I'm saying, but I'm making a point to say that most of the people that are living on fixed incomes, and like I said, we're talking about an average Social Security check. I'm telling you that people in these mobiles barely made a living most of their lives, and some of them have $700 and $800 a month coming in. So I do think, I mean, it may sound a little bit, I think the way that we've always done exemptions works because it does balance out for the people that have the lesser value homes. And I can tell you this, that manufactured housing solves a problem of a housing crunch because those people living there don't have to go into a subsidized situation. So I do think, and not that this is about this, but I'm just gonna say that I do think that having that increase is gonna take the burden off of some of our lowest income people. And it is, I mean, I don't get
It's not a fair world. It's not a fair world, never will be.
Given the numbers too, it's being spread out around a larger group of people than it's being assessed.
In the analysis, you have to remember that you had year one exemption amount was 152,251. Manufactured home value was 49,000.
Yeah.
So you had a big gap there that could, the value could grow.
Yeah.
So year two, you had, if you're using your numbers, 177,250, and then now you've got a manufactured home worth 150, that gap closed. So that's why I used to talk about the elderly exemption program that we exempted 34 million, but the real number was more like 68 million.
Right.
But now that gap is closed because the values have gone up. So, and I don't have an answer to Jerry's conundrum.
Yeah,
It's not somebody living in a $600,000 home has an asset.
But with this,
exactly.
they're
I
still
understand
gonna get
that,
a $25,000 additional reduction of their assessment value. It's still gonna help everybody the same. If we raise these exemptions, I hear you, but we all, no matter what, they're getting an additional $25,000 in the value of their house they're paying their tax worth, and it's the same. To me, it is. It is a fair. It's never going to be a case, Jerry, where we're going to be able to take care of everybody based on their values.
It'll never be
With a different answer.
Yeah.
There's no formula that makes it 100% fair for everybody who lives in this town.
and I agree with you, but I'm just saying that there seems to be a big focus on the mobiles, and that's it. And I think that my thing is to focus on all of them that are there.
An interesting analysis would be to take this total assessed parcel value in 2024 and sort this data by value. And that would show us how many are at 400,000, how many are at 500,000.
Well, I mean, that's what I was wondering. That's what I was really wondering. How much of the elderly exemptions, are coming from
Higher dollar property
Yeah.
versus.
You want to laugh? Because I'm counting real quick. 6, 7.
Because then you can really get to that issue of which cohort is benefiting
Yeah.
the most.
I mean, so far I'm up to maybe 20 of the 153. There's more, but there's not a lot. I mean, we could separate it, but at the end of the day, then what?
It's age based, so it's.
But if we increase across the board, even if we are trying to do something more for the people of a higher value, it's going to impact greater anyhow. And I just honestly think, I would love us to say, let's raise it 25% across the board. But at the end of the day, good luck getting that to the voters without them saying, I'm sorry, but my back's over a bridge now.
Yeah.
And you want me to pay, it won't. I'm just saying, I don't think it will pass if we go too far. We're only going to make a recommendation.
Anyway, so.
They're not.
No, but see, I think that's where you're incorrect. Because just because the values went way up, the taxes went down $10. That's huge. So when you look at the actual addition, when you actually take your home that when it was at 23 times the tax rate versus and 24 times the tax rate, most houses went up $200 to $500 total. And everyone says that, oh, we went up thousands of dollars. No. Do you know anybody that's gone up?
My tax bill went up $1,200.
But on the lower end, they will. Because you went up.
I'm not following.
You went up. I'm saying that everybody else, because your exemption went up a lot higher than most people in a house.
What percentage
was a lot
your
higher.
taxes go up by? A huge percent.
Yeah.
You're probably 120%, where a house was under 60%.
Right.
So when you start doing the math on them, because I know I've done like well over 100 homes in Exeter from a lot of different people. What do you think? And I'm finding it's the same situation. Every one of them, $200 to $500. The ones that went up higher were undervalued, and they should have been brought up in value years ago. And they're just catching up now.
But so how does that impact all of this, though? That's what I'm saying. Like, I hear you, but at the same token, I just don't think. I mean, unless you have a recommendation to make where we could bring this to.
And you can't solve every problem.
No. What I'm saying is everyone's saying everyone's taxes have gone up crazy money. And they haven't.
Many.
Nobody's saying that.
Unless some of the low ones went up.
In a regressive tax system, higher values pay more. So if you have a $600,000 home, you pay more into the system than someone with a $175,000 home. So, the policy question sort of before the group is, does that mean you exempt the $600,000 value more because they're paying too much into the system? I think that's one of the questions at hand. And it doesn't seem to me to be sort of theoretically correct to do that.
No, I don't think so either.
Because they should be in a regressive tax system. I'm not arguing a regressive tax system. I'm the last person to argue for that.
For the record, Russ says I am not arguing for that.
But in the system we're in, it states that the $600,000 home should pay more into the system than the $175,000 home. So when you're thinking about tax exemption policy, I think that has to be part of the thought process.
It is. And to be, like I said, I want to be clear that my thought process is not just about manufactured homes, but I know manufactured housing because I work in the industry. So I do understand the nature of the income. But I would also say the good news, and I've said this to all of my neighbors, manufactured housing has increased in value, which is great for everybody because people buying in the system are now paying more towards the tax system. This is not about that. This is really just about those who are elderly and qualify. And really, we want to keep them there because the challenge is today that people can't afford to buy real estate at a young age or whatever, but at least if we can get these elderly to at least be able to age in place, to me, it's a burden, it's a tension release from the system. Because again, if you've got people that are over a barrel living in housing, they're going to need a subsidized situation. And I know we don't have enough of that.
Yeah. The other thing is somebody who's 80 and up, again, in theory, their home is paid for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another variable in the equation that their home is paid for. And so their tax bill is really all they're grappling with from a tax perspective, I know they have expenses, obviously everybody's got expenses, but That's
yeah,
where the social,
again,
that's where the
impossible
income,
calculations.
that's where the
that
income
we
assets
go down
come in.
that rabbit hole.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I don't have a mortgage. Well, I have a mortgage, but I shouldn't have a mortgage. Then I got divorced, and then, I mean, come on, we could go around.
Have you talked to any other like town select or town managers to ask them how did they come up with their recommendations for these changes? Did they just go? I'm just curious. Like, did they just say, "Oh, let's just"? I mean, it's
That's exactly what they do. They just do. There's no rhyme or reason from what anyone's doing.
That's
They
part-
think, for example, Social Security is a big one. Social Security has gone up, so let's raise our income levels.
Cost of living.
But they don't raise. They've gone through a revaluation. They've gone up 50 to 60% on the houses in the town, but they leave everything stable. So they're not helping the people that really need it.
Well, I don't know about that because I've seen 3 different towns around lately that have increased their.
Some of them have it, some haven't.
I don't have anything empirical other than
Yeah.
maybe Portsmouth that went through an analysis like we are doing right now to get to their new numbers, except I'm certain.
I don't even want to be there.
I don't know where their asset limit came from.
Are you just
That
stretching?
made no
No, I
sense to me
can't
at all.
breathe.
Oh,
The mask.
no.
I'm so congested, and then the mask. I'm like,
Oh,
oh my
gosh.
god.
So, I mean, here's the other thing I would say is I think the logic behind this is we've tackled the data, the questions, right? We've said there's no rhyme or reason anyhow. We can't afford to increase based on income. We can't afford to increase just merely based on the valuation. But can we offset a little to give a little something to indicate that we understand that there's a huge increase and there's
Yeah, we all agree to that. We all agree that that's, that something needs to be adjusted. I'm just, again, and mine's just principle, and you can all vote in another direction, that's fine, but mine's just a principle of, unless everybody goes down a little bit, then everybody should go up a little bit. And it could be $1. But it's just, again, it's just a principle statement that I'm making. It's not about how much money we get from an 80-year-old person who's living in a mobile manufactured home. It's just about a principle. If everybody goes up, mine may go up by $500, but yours went up by $1. Because you're 80, you're living in a manufactured home and you need it. But
I think out of the 3 things, I'm set on 2 of them. The only one was the exemptions. I started at revenue neutral, and from there I would like to decrease it down. But I'm wondering, do we decrease it that much? But the other 2 things, I think we're in good shape on the other 2. If we, so.
On what, on the income and
On the income and on the assets. I don't
we can
think.
talk about the next meeting.
Well, I know, but I'm thinking personally,
Yeah.
with all the
Well,
reasons.
I think it's gonna be a much easier discussion.
Yeah, but as far as, this is the one that's the hardest, because where are you gonna go? You gotta, we got 15, 50, 60. Those are the 3, that's a wide spectrum. And I didn't think we'd be high, but I didn't think we'd be low. I figured we'd come a little bit closer.
It's why if this program was driven by percentages and not dollar amounts, it would be an easier exercise.
Yeah.
And that's what
That's not the reality, so
No.
it is what it is, but it is what makes it difficult to manage in a community where you have such diversity in your housing stock, such a diversity in
Makes it
prices.
pretty much impossible. Mark, do you have a thought? I mean, do you like Jeannie's numbers? Do you like my numbers? Do you like no numbers like Jerry?
I'm not sure I have an answer yet.
Okay, that's fine, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's no need for us to go, okay, it's the 3rd meeting or whatever it is, and so we need to make a decision. I mean, I think we're getting a lot closer. Maybe we can just have something to chew on. before
Reason
next
with me
meeting.
on the percentage versus a flat number. Rough.
I do think that because it hasn't been changed in so long,
Yeah.
and what's happened to values over that time, that some changes is needed.
Oh, yeah, I think we all agree that that's just what's that number?
Yeah.
I don't think we,
Yeah, the percentage comment was based on if you have, again, in a regressive tax system, if you have a valued home at $150,000 and you get 10% off your assessment, and then you have a home of $400,000,
Oh, I thought
you
you
get
meant
10%.
based on the math that she was doing. I'm
No.
saying like
This is just like-
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
If it was percentages, you could
I got it,
universally
I got
apply
it.
it.
Universally apply it.
And you would say our exemption is 10%. no matter what. You live in a manufactured home, you live in a $600,000 home, you can get up to 10% off your value.
Why don't we have that?
Because I don't know if it's ever been proposed.
State law, okay.
We have
Yeah.
to find
Okay, we're not gonna tackle that one tonight.
how we get to
I mean, and that would get to what you're saying.
The minimum
That would
state
make
law
more
is
sense.
13,400, I think.
Because,
Which is completely antiquated. It's so far out of date.
you go back to Mark's statement, and we haven't changed this in a long time. Back when I bought my house for $150,000, the rate was a lot higher than the house I bought. So, and this is a nice house in a nice neighborhood. So you start looking, geez, if I don't have any money in the future, it's great. And that was 30 years ago. So you start looking as things changed. We have had high prices on all the values, I feel, for 30 years. And we're just getting to the point now where we're running, like you said, in the spectrum. We're in the middle now. And it's taken us that long because we actually gave away way too much 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So now that
So
we
let's
have
not
to
make
look
that
at
same
it.
mistake.
No, exactly. I don't want to be at the top of the spectrum.
2008.
Yeah. And
No, it
no.
was before then.
But Jerry's talking about amounts that
$1.
go back 30 years,
Oh, okay.
not just 2008.
It was before.
But I thought the last time we set
It
the
was
the
high for
standard
many
for
years before that. The last time the last time we reset it was 2008.
we put that dollar
But
on.
to Jerry's
Oh, really?
point,
Oh, okay.
we kind of capped it in 2008.
Yeah.
We basically put a stop to what
Yeah.
was a runaway train for
Yeah.
a several year
And
period.
so much has happened in that period of time too. I mean, it's not even the same. I don't know. It's like not even the same world anymore. Like even in real estate, it's not.
Population is.
Yeah.
But except for the high value homes and incomes and all that, we've all been hit. So, even if you're upper middle class, you're still getting nailed.
Yeah.
It's one way or the other, whether it's your kids in college and you don't have the savings for it, or it's buying your groceries because you have, everybody is feeling something, just about. So, come on.
So you're on a good track, I think.
Yeah, okay,
That
so
was my takeaway from tonight.
yeah, I like
We
that.
almost made some progress.
We have made progress. I think we're coming closer on the agreement on how to figure out the number. So what I would like to see, and it's up to the chair, but let's settle on something here, whether it's next month or the month after, but when everybody feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Then go on to the other ones,
Yes.
just to see what it does to our revenue base.
No, I'm looking forward to that,
And then
the whole package.
but then also, we need to discuss changing the revaluation cycle. Because we can do that. We don't have to wait every 5 years. We can roll it. One part of time's done every 3
As long as
years.
it's at least every 5 years.
Yeah, within 5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you adjust it? So let's say it's every 5 years, or it's every 3 years, whatever it is, but we're in like some huge recession. Can you pause it and not do it that year because the value is so
It
low?
has to be every 5 years. Minimum.
It can work for
Yeah.
you or against you.
At maximum.
So I mean, the maximum, sorry,
Yeah.
the other thing about the mid-cycle,
That's
like,
correct.
I
It
don't
goes
see
back.
why we would have
Yeah.
any indication in this market
That
to
does
do
nothing
that. I
either.
don't think it would be in.
Well, no, it's just right now, because we just
Yeah.
reevaluated, but going on in the future, there's something to consider, because then the whack at 5 years won't be as high as it is right now.
exactly. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing about revaluation is this is the first year, and I've been watching revals now for, I don't know, well over 30 years. This is the
Poor Jerry,
very
we gotta get you to
first
watch more
reval. This is the first one that we are
I got a whole list.
closest that we've ever been. It's always been, and even the assessor would tell you, John DiVittori, third high, a third low, a third right on. This year, it seems like 60 to 70% are right on. So I think I find this year is the closest one we've ever got. I don't know what your.
So does that make you
what
happy,
your
Jerry?
thought of.
No, I agree with
Much
you.
happier.
Yeah.
Because the people that are too low should be coming up.
Oh, no, I agree.
And I see the people that are complaining are the ones that were way too low. And,
Yeah.
and I saw the increase in it this year.
Yeah, my opinion is I think your 70% number's low.
It could be. It could be higher than that
I think
now.
it's closer
But
to
it was,
80,
it was
90%.
$30.
of households that were revalued that the revaluation number was correct. Correct in quotations, but within market.
And we try to keep
You know,
it.
How do you know?
Like,
We were actually only at
proportional.
30%.
Who gives you that?
The assessors.
Data? Oh, the assessors,
Yeah,
okay.
the assessors do that.
So if we are perfect and we have the 100%, what the select board has typically liked is to stay between 9 and
90 and
110.
110, yeah.
Yeah.
So, to your point, if we do that, then it is a broader or smaller jump in the valuation.
Yeah. And
So
that
that-
happened a couple of years ago. Jeannie, you remember because you
I
were
do,
in the
I
select
do.
board.
I do,
When
because.
values were going to go up, I think it was 60-something%
Yeah.
on the manufactured homes and the condos, but the board held off.
Well, I think there was
And then
a lot of factors involved in
Yeah.
that too, though. I think we had to.
I'm not putting it at your feet.
Well, no, I know,
I'm just
but
saying that
I'm just saying, just at the time, I think a lot of
Yeah.
us were thinking that this can't last forever. But now, we're in a new norm. Like who the heck knows? I have to, so I don't jump over a bridge. I have to not think about it too much because you just think about like how this is. Like, I mean, people's grown children can no longer live in this. It's just hard.
There's
Anyhow.
a great quote, the only constant is change.
Yeah.
And Dave Sharp was telling me, he told me this once when we were working in Somersworth, and I was talking about business and all this stuff, obviously, but he's like, Chris, this is how things go. This is how things go. And, what goes up right now, the home values will come back down. It will happen. It may not be huge, but so it's not
Oh,
going to be
real
like
estate,
this.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. You're
I don't like
saying
that.
Now, New Hampshire's a little.
that carries out the window for me.
New
That's how I feel.
Hampshire is a little. We're in a different kind of beast, but I live down south,
Me too.
where when it went down a lot more than it went down here, and we talk, everyone's talking about Las Vegas, Orlando, huge,
Oh,
but
those are, that's apples and watermelons.
yeah. So I know Hampshire's different,
Income
but
tax.
we did have in 2000. I remember I bought my house, my first
never
house
been
here in
before.
2009.
It's a
Is
whole
when it
new
was,
normal.
if the house prices had gone down.
We had one decline, it was in 2008, and we went down 4%.
Yeah, so again, it wasn't much, but there was a little bit of a decline. My sister's house in Bedford dropped a bunch of money. It took years to build back up. But again, just remember, the only constant is change, and things do this. Things will go up and things will come down, good and bad.
I think some economists of today's times are telling you that we all need to brace ourselves because we are seeing unprecedented things where the traditional norms are no longer a factor. Like we all thought things were going to. I mean, look at interest rates, right? The Fed kept saying this. They don't know. It's all smoke. And we have no idea where the future of where the economy is going.
And quite honestly, the interest rate should be at 5%. It should be, that's where it should be.
Because
To pay the bills of the government, and that's where you should be. And unfortunately, it was unrealistic thing. There was a reason why it was low, and it was a good reason, but it should have been raised, and it wasn't raised. And that's one of the big problems we're falling into.
Yeah.
So we're not going to cover tariffs, and we're not going to cover the stock
any of that.
market.
I know, really. So this can go offline.
God,
Close out our meeting and
so
then-
I have a little bit of business before we wrap because I want to make sure it would be very helpful for me if two things could happen. One, we could walk away being really clear on anything we're going to be doing and what we're going to at least tentatively bring to the next meeting, and that's one. And the second is, Chris, I know it falls to you to put an agenda together in the packet. So if you need help with that and you can't do it, let me know because I can wing it together as the vice chair.
Well, the agenda I know I can do is just that, after that, and I just kind of was putting it off, wait till you told us, say, hey, where's the agenda? And I missed the email. I just missed it. But after the last meeting, we were going in such circles. I didn't know what the hell to say for the agenda.
And I will ask if anybody's producing any more numbers to get those, have Pam send them
Ahead
to
of
all of
time,
us.
yeah, every
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at these rows.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we need to organize. I just think we need to organize ourselves a little better, and I think we've grown into this. But the other thing is, I think that's what I'm saying about. I think if we know where we're going, then you'll know what's on the agenda and not go, oh, we're clueless. So I'm thinking there's a couple recommendations on the table. I did hear that we want to run some numbers on the You say it again, Julie, you said it so well. It's like the bottom line. I mean, I don't know what you guys want to run for numbers.
Using your model, running
What
Chris's
does it do with
10,
our
10, and
revenue?
10,
Comparison model.
and Jerry's 35 to 40, and maybe Mark's 50,
Mark, you're at 50?
He was at 60.
60, sorry,
You
I
still
brought
wanna
you
do
down
that?
10%.
Is
Or are
that
you
still
still
something you
interested
want?
in
That was
seeing what
more
that
just
looks
for
like?
discussion as opposed to an actual proposal.
Okay.
So
Just sort of
60
normalizing it.
60,000 or 60%?
60% because the average
Okay.
VDAL increase was 61% for
So-
residential, right?
Do you want those numbers to be run?
Do we want to do a side-by-side comparison with everyone's recommendations and kind of see where the bottom line
Is that
falls in?
asking too much of Janet, or, I don't.
Yeah, whatever is not gonna like weigh Janet's.
I know, so that's what I'm asking.
I mean,
I want those numbers. I want the 10% number as close to yours. I wanna see how much that affects.
I can take the same work that, I did that today in 20 minutes. It's not that much, you just need to manipulate the data. I can do various tabs and plug in different percentages. I can do percentages versus, that's all. I mean, I can run that.
Okay.
We can plan, but I would say the first order of business this month is that we throw it all out on the table
Yeah, and wrap it up.
and wrap it up. And I would say
I agree.
the goal should be, I mean, it's hard because I see both sides, but I think it sounds like you all both want a little bit more. Chris clearly wants a little bit less, and I'm trying to say, like, just flat amount neutral as possible, because
But I just wanna ask these guys, because we've had so much discussion in the last 90 minutes plus, do you still feel the same and you want to run higher percentages? Just before I ask
Okay,
Jeannie to do it, yes or no?
I think it would be helpful to see
So Mark does.
Jerry's numbers
yeah,
compared to
okay.
yours. Give us some,
so what percentage are you pick one, because
50% is revenue neutral, but from that point, that was just something to get it where we are now.
so you
to
want
keep us
to
there.
increase
But
these
that doesn't
numbers by
mean-
50%.
But that's what originally I did, just for revenue neutral. So if we're spending $700,000 now,
Well, we'll see what
we're still
50%
spending
is.
700.
All right,
I'm
put
not
it to-
opposed to going down.
There.
I mean,
Okay.
I just had to start someplace.
Nope, okay, so we will call it
So,
50, I'll run it at
yours
50, I'll run yours
10.
at 10 across the board, and I'll keep my $24,999 because we want to get rid of the dollar. I'm kidding, we'll call it 25, and I don't know, that's so crazy. All right, and then I would love the second thing on the agenda to begin conversations about income levels, and if we have time, get to asset amount. But I do
definitely.
think they'll be quicker, I do think they'll be quicker.
Yes, I want that to be our agenda basically next month. And if we finish up early and you guys if you on your own dig into the next tab and you want to look into it.
Russ, what is
But I don't know.
the website that gives the, I forget, and I know that you know it, that gives the data on like a particular town, what's the population, how many are.
Census.gov.
DRA.
Or
Or the DRA.
DRA gives the exemption amounts, and is that
Oh.
what you're saying, or
No.
population?
Yeah,
No.
she's looking at the census information.
Oh,
like
okay.
census.gov.
So yeah, that's the Office of State Planning, it used to be called.
Oh,
I forget
yeah.
the new
It's the
name.
Office of Planning and Development.
Planning
I used to look at
Development.
all that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some of that in here. But I would also, I ran some, I took the towns we've been talking about and I ran just so I'm gonna save it for next meeting and I will send it out ahead of time. But it's information on what people are doing on income limits. I just thought it was interesting across the board. And I ran Durham, because we talked about that, and I ran Durham, Hampton, Dover, Somersworth, Rochester, just so we could see where we were at. But I think some of your income information will become handy when we talk about that.
Yeah, I was just asking Russ about that because it shows the median income. Median.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But doesn't necessarily help.
Well, it was incredible to me when I went and I ran the difference, like what percentage has Social Security gone up since then? I was like, oh my gosh, like, but it says you really can't, something I read said you really can't base that like in wealth because of the median cost index and stuff, like the things that are higher today.
also it's an average, so
Yeah.
I didn't look
It's interesting, it
for,
was so
I
interesting.
didn't look for the median, and I'm sure there's some spreads in there
Yeah.
because people's work histories are
Are different.
all over the place.
Yeah, sure.
And then the other thing you talked about, and I think maybe for, just to keep it around, the next step, we could talk about I don't know if it's us or not about reassessment cycles. This is more about exemption, but we could move into the one that we were talking about earlier, which was verification.
Yes.
Like we could have a conversation about like what's happening. We could maybe get Janice to give us some information. And
Yeah, I think that would be good for next
the
meeting.
state.
well, maybe for the one after next. Yeah.
Yeah, but if we free up.
Yeah.
Municipality have
we-
particular forms you need to fill out, but I think that there might be something more that we can check. And that was a particular interest of one of the other select board members.
Yeah. I think the veterans conversation is going to be a lengthy one.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to need a couple
We
of
should do that.
for sure. So, all right. Excellent.
Sounds good.
Proceed,
Motion
Ms.
to
Chair.
adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I want to motion we adjourn this meeting at 8:09.
Second.
All vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. I took a scan of that.
Great.
Yeah. I will also try to find some time to revise the minutes.
To Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.